G'day guys and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson we're looking at key knowledge point 3310. That is unit 3, area of study 3 and the 10th key knowledge point for this area of study. Today specifically we're looking at global considerations for operations management. Now hopefully this key knowledge point gives us a list of different global considerations that you need to know. And that is global sourcing of inputs, overseas manufacture and global outsourcing. But once again, this key knowledge point uses the word including, so you are free to talk about any other global considerations that you might be familiar with. As far as global considerations are concerned, this is broadly taking advantage of the concept of globalization. In our modern world, you are not limited by not always limited by the political borders of your country. You're not even limited by the geological borders of your country. Here in Australia, we're basically on an island, surrounded by sea, girt by sea even. And historically, it might have been impractical to consider getting perishable goods like fruits and vegetables from other countries because it would have taken them too long to get here and they would have expired or rotted on the journey. But these days, modern technology means that isn't really a problem. If we want to import lemons from North America when they're out of season here in Australia, we can do that, and we do. So, if we live in a world where business can take place anywhere on the globe at any time, what opportunities does that present? And that's really what this key knowledge point is about. Generally speaking, you will be looking to take advantage of global opportunities to source higher quality materials, to build your business in strategic locations, to source cheaper inputs, or to access global talent pools. Now, the first of the named global considerations is overseas manufacture, and that is where a business elects to produce its goods in a country other than the country where the business is headquartered. So certainly, I think it's a bit of a meme that most things are produced in China. We all know that made in China is a pretty common stamp to see on the back of a produced good. And usually that's to do with businesses taking advantage of reduced labor costs. Certainly the minimum wages in Australia for laborers and manufacturing staff are much higher than the wages that can be paid at livable wages, absolutely livable wages, but the cost of living is lower in many areas around the world. And so employees in those areas don't demand such high salaries to consider they're being paid fairly. And so your business can save money by manufacturing your goods in a different economy. Certainly, too, there are other advantages. For example, if an Australian business decided that it wanted to sell its product in Europe or in North America, that's in the Northern Hemisphere, we're a long way down in the Southern Hemisphere, it might be that if you're producing product in those countries, that product will get to market quicker. If you think about Coca-Cola, any Coca-Cola you've drank in Australia, it's probably brewed, fermented in Australia. As you go overseas, if you drink Coca-Cola there, it's probably a local product. Coca-Cola is one business that have almost global manufacturing to ensure that their product is readily available to their almost global customer base. And we can consider global outsourcing as another example of a global consideration. If overseas manufacture is manufacturing your goods overseas, global outsourcing is sending other parts of your business, not necessarily just manufacturing, but other aspects of your business overseas. Now, you've got to consider that this area of study is all about operations management. So when we talk about global outsourcing, well, it's true that you could outsource your financial management, you could outsource your training and employee development, you could certainly outsource your customer service. I think we've all had the experience of calling a call center, whether you're dealing with a bank or a telecommunications company, and speaking to someone, you've got no idea where in the world they are because it's really unimportant as long as you're speaking the same language. Make sure if you're talking about global outsourcing as a global consideration, you're talking about operations. But for many businesses, customer service would be part of their operations. Certainly, if they're an insurance company processing claims and interacting with customers about insurance claims is part of their operations. And so if they've outsourced that customer interaction to another business in another country, then that is outsourcing. Functionally, the difference between global manufacture or overseas manufacture and outsourcing is that overseas manufacture refers to your business, your employees in a different country, whereas outsourcing is recruiting someone else's business or a group of people that aren't necessarily your employees to take care of some non-core aspect of your business. So certainly, if you move all of your operations overseas, including all of your core functions, then you wouldn't necessarily consider it outsourcing. You would probably look at that as an example of a business that has been sold to overseas investors. Now, supply chain management is terminology that doesn't necessarily appear in this key knowledge point. In the old study design, it did. But at this sticky end of this area of study, it's important that you have a concept of what this means. Supply chain management is about all of the steps that take place before you receive your inputs. So for operations management, we've looked at operation systems, and the three key elements of operation systems are inputs, processes, and outputs. Your inputs typically are going to come from suppliers. The due diligence that you have to work through to ensure that your suppliers are all upholding the same sort of social responsibility that you want to see. The efforts made to ensure that your suppliers are going to be reliable and able to deliver your inputs on time and in the quantity and quality that you want them to. This is all supply chain management. Consider that if there are 4 or 5 different steps in your supply chain, maybe you run a cafe, and so you've got to consider coffee beans are grown on a farm somewhere. They're transported from the farm to a wholesaler who transports them from the wholesaler to a roaster who roasts the beans, who then sells the beans to businesses like yours. Let's say there's some sort of plague that infests the coffee bean plants on the farm. Well, there goes your supply chain and you're not getting your inputs. Maybe the roaster has a power outage and they can't do any roasting for a couple of days. You're not getting your inputs. Maybe one of the transportation links breaks down and there's flooding that washes out some roads somewhere in the world that connects one of the links in your supply chain to another link in your supply chain. You're not getting your inputs. So you've got to consider, when you are thinking about global considerations, how you're going to manage your supply chain. Is it possible that global considerations present you with the opportunity to set up redundancies? That you know that if coffee roaster A suddenly can't deliver on the inputs that you need, you can quickly place an order with coffee roaster B or coffee roaster C, who it doesn't have the same supply chain, so isn't going to be impacted by the same issues. Certainly, if we think about examples within our lifetime of unprecedented events, during the COVID era, every supermarket ran out of toilet paper. And that's generally because most toilet paper has the same supply chain. And so when one business runs out of toilet paper, if Coles runs out of toilet paper, Woolworths is also going to run out of toilet paper, as is Aldi, it doesn't matter, they're all getting toilet paper from the same places. And so for those businesses, looking at building redundancy into supply chains for staple products like that is probably conversations they have definitely been having over the last few years. It's important, as part of supply chain management, that business managers are looking at the proximity of suppliers to themselves and to their end customers. It might be that your suppliers are all located in one region of the planet and you've got customers in that region of the planet, so it might make sense as part of your supply chain management to set up overseas manufacturing in that region to take advantage of decreased transportation costs from supplier to your business to your customers. It might be that global considerations mean that you can look to suppliers overseas who can provide higher quality inputs or can provide inputs at much lower cost and save your business money that way. And certainly transportation is always worth considering. It might be that overseas manufacturer is going to save you a huge amount in transportation costs because otherwise you'd be trying to transport things to and from Australia, which once again, we're a long way away from the rest of the world. So transportation to and from Australia can be costly, particularly for very high volumes of stuff or very heavy stuff. Some examples of businesses, and not necessarily Australian businesses, but businesses that take advantage of sourcing their inputs from overseas. Nike doesn't have necessarily domestic production as part of their operations. They produce all the different elements of their footwear in various plants around the world, whether it's the soles and the beds of the shoes, whether it's the leather cuts, whether it's their shoelaces, whether it's even the shoe boxes themselves. They're produced wherever is most cost effective for Nike and then assembled at different places around the planet for distribution globally. Certainly, Telstra has over the years experimented with outsourcing their customer relations work to all sorts of businesses all around the world. I think we've ended up today with them bringing it back in-house. And certainly Boeing sources parts for their planes from all around the world, and they keep engineers and mechanics on retainer at global transportation hubs all around the world. So when one of their planes lands at LAX or Sydney or Dubai, if there's something in one of those planes that needs a bit of work, if the mechanics need to look at it, if the engineers need to look at it, they're there and ready to do it, no matter where that plane's come from. They're ready at different transportation hubs all around the world. So in summary for this key knowledge point, globalization offers opportunities, and whether or not your business is going to take advantage of those opportunities will require careful planning and consideration, evaluating whether or not there are costs that can be reduced by taking advantage of global considerations, identifying whether or not the inputs that you're sourcing can be impacted significantly by taking advantage of global sourcing of inputs, and certainly evaluating your supply chains and looking for ways in which you can ensure that corporate social responsibility has been adhered to and observed at all stages in your supply chain might be one reason that you look to embrace or reject global opportunities. Where possible, in an assessment task, you want to be able to link global opportunities to an impact on the efficiency or effectiveness of a business. If sourcing your inputs from overseas means that you can get higher quality inputs, we can expect that those higher quality inputs will result in fewer defects in your manufacturing, which will reduce wastage, which will increase the efficiency and effectiveness of operations, for example. Or perhaps it's you're having a hard time getting the human resources you need. You're looking for very experienced, very capable employees, and it might be that the local talent pool isn't offering employees that can meet your needs. So you look to the global talent pool and you look to source inputs from overseas in terms of recruiting employees from overseas. And that might mean that you're able to access employees with greater skills and a greater wealth of experience who are less likely to make mistakes, less likely to be resulting in defects, that'll reduce wastage, etc., etc., etc. So however you think about these things, try and link them back in your head to an impact on efficiency and effectiveness for business operations. That's all for today. That's all for Unit 3. See you next time.